You're listening to the AMB Network, Alternative Media Broadcast Network.
Congressman Kucinich, I want to move to a different area because this is a serious question. The godmother of your daughter, Shirley MacLaine, writes in her new book that you cited a UFO over her home in Washington State, that you found the encounter extremely moving, that it was a triangular craft, silent and hovering, that you felt a connection to your heart and heard directions in your mind. Now, did you see a UFO?
I did, and the rest of the account, I didn't. It was unidentified flying object. Okay, it's unidentified. I saw something. Now, to answer your question, I'm moving and I'm also going to move my campaign office to Roswell, New Mexico, and another one in Exeter, New Hampshire. Okay. And also you have to keep in mind that Jimmy Carter saw a UFO. And also that more people in this country have seen UFOs and I think approve of George Bush's presidency.
Actually,
and so, wait, we're just getting started here.
No. I mean, we have about 14% of Americans say they have seen UFOs. I'm going to move.
What was the percentage?
14%.
What was that percentage?
14.
Thank you.
I want to see. I'm going to ask Senator Obama a question in the same line. The 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 who went to the moon back in 1969. All said that they believe there is life beyond Earth. Do you agree?
You know, I don't know, and I don't presume to know. What I know is there is life here on Earth, and that we're not attending to life here on Earth. We're not taking care of kids who are alive and unfortunately are not getting health care. We're not taking care of senior citizens who are alive and are seeing their heating prices go up. So as president, those are the people I will be attending to first. There may be some other folks on their way.
When people hear the word UFO, they tend to tune out. However, the term does not necessarily mean little green men from Mars. It's a scientific term that means unidentified flying object. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of UFO sightings and reports every year worldwide. In fact, just 2 days ago, flights in Bremen, Germany were grounded, canceled, or diverted due to a UFO showing up multiple times on the airport's radar screen. This comes on the heels of a July event that's now surfacing about a bizarre incident near London's Heathrow Airport, where a pilot was convinced he was going to collide mid-flight with a metallic object shaped like a rugby ball. Both incidents are still being investigated by authorities. While these reports are nothing new, yet amidst the many, many UFO hoaxes, my next guest alleges that a fraction of the sightings are indeed extraterrestrial. His name is Dr. Stephen Greer, and he's the founder of the Disclosure Project, an organization that works with retired military and government officials in order to get Congress to investigate UFOs. But as a skeptic, I had a lot of questions. So I first asked him if he had one incident that he would pick to convince people like me that aliens have indeed made contact with Earth.
That's a tough question because, you know, it's the weight of the evidence, and it's like J. Allen Hynek, who is the Air Force Blue Book guy. He said, look, he says, it's an embarrassment of riches. We have so much material. We have so much information. But if you take for one case that we have in the Disclosure Project, and that's a man who was the senior guy at the FAA, and they were tracking this object over Alaska, and it was at one point in the sky, and in one sweep of the radar, it would be 40, 50 miles away, moving completely non-linearly, not like an airplane. And we have the radar tape, we have the pilot report, we have all the evidence from the airline and the government. And this whistleblower who came forward, John Callahan, he said, I'm one of the senior officials in the government that not only have the evidence, but was part of a cover-up to keep the American people ignorant about it.
And so talk about the Disclosure Project. It's the organization that you founded. Why and how did you formulate it?
You know, it grew out of an interest I had since I was a child. My uncle was an aerospace engineer with Northrop Grumman. And I had a sighting when I was a young child and started an organization later called the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence to look into, are we alone, and what can we do as citizens to bring out this information and perhaps make contact. I mean, it was really kind of a visionary effort 24 years ago when we started it. Disclosure Project started because in my early days, I was naive, and I thought, well, if we put all this evidence together, government documents, astronauts, cosmonauts from the former Soviet Union who have seen these objects, and we have all this and we give it to, in this case, Bill Clinton and his CIA director, who I personally briefed on this subject, they'll do the right thing in the secrecy, bring out this information. It'll be one of the greatest discoveries in human history. Not only that, it'll bring out the technologies, which, frankly, is the reason behind the secrecy. We'll get to this in a minute. Well, what happened was that the political establishment didn't want to touch this. And so what I just found is that little by little, it was up to we, the people, to do it. So I started a grassroots movement to identify people who had the courage to come forward outside of their national security oaths, who had top secret clearances, and give evidence on this, and give materials, and give documents, and give photographs of whatever they have. And it led to this big global effort called now the Disclosure Project.
I wanted to bring it to Ancient Aliens really quickly because it's a entertaining documentary series on the History Channel. It surmises that ancient cultures have also documented UFOs. I mean, going back hundreds of years. If aliens have been around for thousands of years visiting Earth, why has their message been lost this whole time? Why haven't they delivered it?
Well, I don't know that their message has been lost, but maybe it's been subsumed or incorporated into various ancient traditions. If you look at the Hopis, if you look at Mesoamerica, South America, there are a lot of traditions that may have actually come from encounters that happened with non-human or advanced life forms from other places. Now, this gets into a really tricky area, and it's where theologians have a problem with this, and that is, if you were to encounter something that's hundreds of thousands or millions of years more advanced than we are, every manifestation of their civilization would look miraculous, would look like a miracle or something that you would hear about in a religious text. So the question becomes, how much of the stories that we have from ancient times, ancient cultures, that we take as mythology might have been witnessing things that couldn't be explained even today, never mind 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago.
I also can't help but bring up the Phoenix Lights, because to me, I think that's one of the most fascinating cases.
Yes, I was there. The day
Were
it happened.
you?
Yes.
My goodness. Let's play a clip really quick for our audience who don't know about this incident in 1997.
Right.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
Governor Symington is referring to what is now known as the Phoenix Lights, an object videotaped by many and seen by thousands over several nights in the Arizona sky in 1997.
Major sighting here.
It was described by witnesses as larger than a football field and silent.
And I suspect that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
So, Dr. Greer, you have the Arizona governor. You have thousands of people in Arizona who saw this. How is it possible that this is kind of an open and shut case when, so many people saw this, and even he's saying, hey, I'm convinced?
Well, in the Disclosure Project files, we have hundreds of cases like that, some of which are better that the public don't know about. So I tell people should go to our website. It's all up there. The videos, the testimony from all these government officials is all on our website. And so we haven't held anything back except some confidences I've had to keep when I've had meetings at the Pentagon and elsewhere. But what I tell people is that the reason it's hidden in plain sight is that the establishment doesn't want people to know, not so much that there's life out in the universe. There's 2/3 of the public believes that there's intelligent life somewhere out there. Over half believe we've been visited, all right? And this is consistent in polls. It's the technology. How do you put something like that up in the sky and move it, no sound, completely quiet? You're not dealing with fossil fuels. You're not dealing with conventional rockets. You're dealing with an entirely new area of physics, which, if it was disclosed, would mean the end of big oil, the end of the petrodollar, the end of public utilities as we know it. It would be an entirely new energy paradigm. And so the macroeconomic power behind the secrecy is what no one's been looking at. And this is what the Minister of Defense of Canada and I did a press conference on a few years ago. Paul Hellyer and I did a press conference about this, that it's the energy and technology part of this story that has led to the extreme secrecy and also the extreme ridicule.
Let's talk about your documentary series, because you were mentioning earlier that you've spoken to people who have actually taken these bodies out of crafts. I mean, Dr. Greer, where are these bodies? I mean, in Sirius, you discussed the Atacama skeleton found in Chile as an extraterrestrial being. However, scientific analysis concluded that it's human DNA.
Oh, no,
it was a
actually,
human.
we never said it was ET. We said we don't know what it is. And the DNA analysis from Dr. Nolan at Stanford is that 9% of the genetic material isn't matching to humans. Now, as of last week, we just discovered that the stature of this being, which is, now this is a 6...
Can I finish my question really quickly? Because I think even making these allegations before you know, I mean, you're saying that we don't know. Does it discredit your larger attempt to expose the truth about UFOs if you're saying these things? We can't see the beams that have been, supposedly...
Well, no, and I've never been to a facility where they've been autopsied. However, I know men who have been there, and those are the people in the Disclosure Project and who have gone on the record, who actually have been on retrieval teams. So, and those are firsthand things. Now remember, if the New York Times had 3 people to confirm a very controversial political story, they'd run with it. We have over 110 on digital videotape with top secret clearances, name, rank, and serial number. These are not anonymous. So I tell people, please don't take my word for it. As for the Atacama humanoid, very controversial. The Huffington Post had 5 million people on their site when this thing broke a few months ago. We still don't know what it is. Now, the people who say it's human, they're jumping the gun. The people who say it's ET, they're jumping the gun.
How can equating UFOs with aliens be credible at this point when we live in a world drone technology has existed? I mean, now it's so prevalent, and it probably has existed for decades prior, Dr. Green. How can we ever tell what's a drone, what's a UFO?
Well, you have to know the science behind it. The drones that people see make a noise, like this case that just happened in Germany. It's very noisy. Those things are not quiet. Now, this does open up another whole discussion of what do we have in our classified projects that might look like a UFO, and do those exist? The answer is yes. We have been designing and building what are called EMG, electromagnetic gravitic, anti-gravity, pop culture term, not proper, but things that defy gravity, that float and are silent since the 50s, since the 1950s. Now, this is highly classified material. The main writer, one of the big writers for Jane's Defense Weekly, Nick Cook, wrote a book called The Hunt for Zero Point, talking about pulling energy from the zero-point energy field and how that's been applied into anti-gravity systems that are very classified at Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. So I think that we have to have enough information, if you're investigating this, to know that some of them are just misidentifications. Some actually are extraterrestrial vehicles because there have been creatures and beings seen associated with them. Like the French government case where one of these objects landed and there were 4 creatures outside the UFO in a lavender field. And this is in the official Japan, or the equivalent of their NASA report. So don't take my word, listen to the French government's report. Same thing at the Bentwaters case in England. An object landed, there were ETs seen associated with the landing.
But if it's in these official reports, how come there's no official documentation of the beings? That's what I don't understand.
Well, that's a very good question. You have to ask the people keeping the secret. I mean, I wasn't there when those things happened. We've just interviewed and found the people, the men who were there, and some women who were involved hands-on with these encounters. So the ET issue, I think, is very clearly established through the body of evidence we have. But there's something I think even more spectacular, and this turns this whole question you asked on its head. If some of these objects that are moving at 100,000 miles per hour and making right-hand turns without decelerating hours, what are we doing using jet engines and rockets? What kind of technologies are extant, are out there that might give us an entirely new civilization without pollution, poverty, what have you? This is, I think, where this is the biggest part of the story. It isn't the ET end of it. It's the high-tech energy and propulsion part of the story, which is at the heart of the secrecy.
That was Dr. Stephen Greer, UFOologist and founder of the Disclosure Project.
You're listening to the Alternative Media Broadcast Network.
Hello, welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shepard-Natze. Paul Hellyer served as the Canadian Minister of Defense in the 1960s, shaping the country's armed forces for years to come. It was only in his retirement that he says he made a life-changing discovery. He became the first cabinet-level politician from a G8 country to publicly state that there is extra